Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through how we decide on our development area. And so when I mean development area, I mean an area that we're picking that we want to be an expert at, meaning, we know the streets, we know the houses, we know the council zoning, we know all the things we need, without even, someone could almost tell you, that house and that street, and you can almost picture it in your head, and you can have a good idea of what you need to think about even before you've gone on Google Earth or even before you've gone out there to have a look at it. And so to do that, I think a good starting point is to make sure you just pick an area you already know already is probably my first point of call. So if you already know the area already, then it's a lot easier for you to become familiar with that particular area. So a good starting point might be to get on Google Earth and try and decide on what that area is going to be. So the thing to understand, though, we really want to, at the end of this, we want to be finding profitable development areas, and we want to find areas that we can develop as well. So some of these areas we may or may not be able to develop. So probably the first starting point might be to look at, where you live. And because remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get, we know if where people want to live there, meaning if there's demand, then there's a good chance of being able to sell it. The property down the track where we want to develop it, and I suppose we're using the logic of if you're your average person. The thing is, might be that you may not be your average person. So if you're living in a multi-million-dollar house, then you're not your average person. So because in Adelaide, the median house price or the average price is $430,000. So if you're living in a house that's around that, or even if it's more expensive or a little bit less expensive, then you're probably okay. If you're way outside that, then perhaps you want to go to the next suburb over, which is slightly less expensive or more expensive, depending, and you want to try and get as close to the median house price as we possibly can. The other thing so that's probably my starting point, because if we know our own suburb where we live in, it's quite easy, and to be honest, there's less chance of you making any mistakes if you already know the area pretty well. So I've just picked address here, not where I live, but I've just picked an address as our sample one. So let's assume that I live in this house up in Banksia Park. So if I know this area really well, which I do know this area pretty well, I'm just going to scroll out. For some reason my internet's not working very well, but it doesn't matter. So I know in Banksia Park, I know all the streets in Banksia Park, and I know that down into the street there's a primary school, and then I know that here there's a high school, and I know that there's some ovals here, and I know there's a golf course up here, and I know there's a shopping centre over here, and I know there's a shopping centre over there. So you can see I know that area pretty well. And I know that there's a pub up the corner here, and then you drive up here and you start heading up into the hills. So straight away, I don't have to do much research at all, because I already know the area pretty well. And so that's our first thing. Next thing we want to look at, which if you've watched my previous videos, I've shown you how to go in and access some other things, which I've told you how to go in there and access title reports, which you're not going to need that right now. But I've also told you how to go and source something called the property location browser, which will be able to give you some information about what suburb it is. And I've also showed you something else, which is called the location viewer, location SA map viewer. So what this is going to do for us is it's going to come in here, and we're going to go probably location browser. Okay, so let's assume we're going to hopefully try and work out if where we live is a good place to develop. And I'm not saying your house you but necessarily be able to develop, but we can maybe look at the surrounding houses and see what options are. So Banksia Park. Okay, so remember from my previous explanation, I showed you how we can actually go in and look at different, come in here and we can click on info, click on that particular address, and it'll give us some information about, whole pile of properties. But we come in here in suburbs, postcodes, map index, council. So we can go to council. So show on screen. So it's our first thing. We want to make sure we understand where the council area is, because we're going to try and stick within one council. And the reason we're doing that is we want to really understand the development plan for that particular council, so that we're not going to make any mistakes, and that we can look at things really quickly and really understand what's going on. Okay, so that's the first step. So we know where the council is, so we're right smack bang in the middle. So we know that we can go all the way around our suburb and still be in the same council zone. And you can understand why this is important, because let's imagine if we live right there, then this might be a bit of an issue, and then you know, across the road might be in a whole different council zone. So that's the first thing. So we know that we can, wherever we look around this house, we're on the same council area. So that's the first thing we understand. Next thing we're going to look at is we're going to go into this SA viewer thing. Do the same thing. We're going to go 14 Aboyne Street, Banksia Park. Okay, same thing we're looking at. And when we showed in here, we go into this data sets. We go into land management, was it somewhere? Property and planning. And one of these things here shows us development plan index land divisions. So what we're trying to do is just familiarise ourselves with what's happening around the area as far as developments go. So we can see this guy here is doing subdivision from 1 into 2. This guy has done 1 into 2 on the corner there. So this is just before we've even worried about going to council, we can sort of see that they are doing some subdivisions 1 into 2 in the area. And what that means for us, firstly, it means that there's a potential to do a subdivision, which is good. And then secondly, if all these people are doing the subdivisions around here, you know, they must be doing it for a reason. You're assuming they're doing it to try and make some money. So it is a bit of a guide for us that maybe there is potential to make some money. And we can see this guy here has done what's called a hammerhead. So it's kept his existing house and he's building at the back, or he's got a block of land at the back. This guy's kept the existing house and he's put another house at the back here. So again, that means there's potential for a hammerhead, or there's potential for keeping an existing house and then building at the back. So what this is doing for us is just, we're trying to learn off of what other people, the journey that other people have gone on, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. And we can see a few other different developments along the way here. You know, someone's done a development here where they've done a little subdivision. So yeah, so we just get a bit of a feel. And so what that would, just on the surface of it, we'd say, well, there is probably some potential to be able to do a development, you know, right around where we're living right now. So what's the next thing? So the next thing after that is we might go and have a look at the development plan. And then find out the zoning and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to go into, we know this is in the city of Tea Tree Gully, of Tea Tree Gully development plan. Click on that. Come in here. And we're going to go into, it opens up. Still opening up. Still opening up. Anyway, so what we're going to do, once we get into here, we're going to scroll down and we're going to try and find the map section here. And the reason we're doing this is because we know that it's council index map. And the cool thing about this is if we know our area really well, we can find on this map really easily where it's located, because we know that is Northeast Road, and then we know we come all the way up to the top here, and this is basically, you know, you don't know this, but I know that that's in that area there, and I'm trying to find Northeast Road, Haynes Road, Elizabeth Street, Milne Road. It's actually a little bit further up, TG18. Joins TG18. TG22, so we go up a little bit more to 18, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so we found our address here, which is Banksia Park, and it is over here at Aboyne Street. So now what we're trying to do is find out if there's anything we need to think about in this area here, and start to become a bit of an expert in our area. Okay, what do we got here? So local reserves, we can see that. And then we've got here, we've got development constraints. So these squiggly lines here are something to do with creeks. So we just have to understand that what effect that may have on us. We know that where our houses are, wherever it was, Grantville Road, Waitara, we're still here, so we're still away from that. So we're okay as far as that's concerned. And then we are on this one here. We know that we're in the residential zone. We can find our house again. Haynes Road, Boyne Street. There we go. So we know we're in the residential zone. And that is pretty much it. So there's nothing else. So we're not in a particular policy area. So that means then we go into our council requirements here and we find out what our zoning is. We know we're in the residential zone, commercial zone, Newman Road policy area. Scroll down until we find residential zone. Third urban zone. District centre. Okay, somewhere in here, there'll be a residential zone. And once we find residential zone, what we're going to do then is find out what the different requirements are, like subdivision requirements and minimum block size and all that sort of stuff. No, somewhere in there. But anyway, so you can see what I'm talking about. And obviously I've taken you through this process before, so you're aware of how to do this. And that's it. So basically we've gone in there and we've familiarised ourselves with the area. And then once we've done that, we are then going to decide whether there's potential to subdivide any of these blocks. And then once we've done that, then we found out, we understand the area, we understand what the options as far as subdividing goes. Then we're going to consider what the current value of, say our house or comparable houses to ours. And then we're going to work out what they might be worth if we knock it down and subdivide as a block of land, or what it'd be worth as a brand new house. So if we would build a couple of houses on there, have a think about what that might be worth. And then, try to work out whether it's going to be worth more once it's subdivided than before it's subdivided, and make sure there's going to be some profit in there. And then on top of that, then what we're going to do is take into account any issues along the way. Because you'll know this area quite well, you'll know whether the blocks are slopey, or you'll know whether there's lots of trees in the area. And so a lot of these issue type things will already start to pop up, and you start to be really clear what some of these issues are going to be. And so, that's basically a starting point to try and find out how you find a development site is use your own area as a guide from the start. What you're going to do then is you're going to find that maybe your area isn't the best area. Maybe because there's not a potential to subdivide, or maybe because your area isn't in the average house price of what a property's worth, or maybe the price of a brand new house is not selling at a premium relative to an existing house. And so that's basically how we're trying to become an expert at one particular area. And if you find that your area is not the best area, then you move to the next area over, and then you have a look at options as far as that goes. And what you're also trying to do when you're going into this mapping section, where we went in here and had a look at the zoning when you were TG 18, I think. TG 18, somewhere in here. So somewhere in there. So we know there what we could do is maybe try and find some areas where we know you can actually subdivide into greater densities. So if we know that a particular area you can only subdivide into 300 square metre blocks, but the next suburb or the next zone over you can subdivide into 200 or 250 square metre blocks, then maybe that can become your area that you become an expert in. And so that's why it's really important, firstly, to pick a council area, then to pick a zone within the council area, and then maybe even pick a policy area within that council area. So then you become an expert at that, and obviously the more you can develop that area, the better options you may have. So hopefully that's made sense, how you can try and narrow down a particular area. As far as, I think what you really need to be able to do is trust yourself and trust your own knowledge and experience, and maybe not necessarily worry about advice from other people, whether it's real estate agents or mortgage brokers or anybody. Basically, you've just got to be able to verify all this information yourself. And likewise, then just start giving the council a call and just getting some feedback from council and asking them what they think about options as far as subdividing and developing. And then once you actually start to find these properties, what you want to be doing is if you're buying an existing house to develop, you want to be making sure you're not paying a premium for the existing house, because essentially you're going to knock it down anyway. So you really want to be paying land value for that existing house. So you want to make sure it's in the condition that people aren't going to want to live in it. Because if you're competing against people that want to live in it, then obviously, they're going to buy it and they don't necessarily care so much about, the price they're paying, because they're going to live in it. And so you really want someone that's not going to buy it to live in it. And so hopefully you can buy it at land value. So hopefully that all makes sense. Start working away on that. If it's not the area you live, maybe it's the area that you work in. Maybe you work in Mile End, so Mile End, maybe use that as your area. Or maybe you've got friends that live in Salisbury, so pick that your area. If for whatever reason it doesn't match the criteria of what we're trying to do as the best development area, then pick an area that you might think that will be, but then relatively well. So you go and visit your friends quite often, you know the area quite well, or you go to work every day, you know the area quite well, or your mum lives in a particular area, you know that area quite well. So, I'm not necessarily saying you have to do a development where you live, but pick an area where you know quite well, almost like the back of your hand, so that you don't have to do a huge amount of research from the start. And the good thing is, as you progress further and further down, you can get into more and more detail and not have to worry about where the local school is or where the local shops are, because you know the area so well, you don't need to worry about that. So hopefully that made a bit of sense. Start working away on that, and then we'll keep in touch and move on to the next step. Thanks.